The cargo freighter Star Runner pulled into Station Alpha 7 with a low rumble that shook the docking bay. It was just another routine delivery run from the outer colonies, nothing special about it. The massive ship settled into position with mechanical precision as dock workers prepared for another long shift of unloading supplies. Andre Washington grabbed his scanner and headed toward the cargo bay. He'd been working the docks for 12 years now, and he thought he'd seen everything. Medical supplies, food rations, mining equipment, it was all the same routine. But today would be different in ways he never could have imagined. The first few containers came off without any problems. Andre and his team worked efficiently, checking manifests and directing the cargo loaders. The station needed these supplies, especially with winter protocols keeping the temperature lower than usual to conserve energy. Everyone was bundled up in their work jackets, breath visible in the cold recycled air. It was Kevin Jones who first noticed something odd. "Hey Andre, come look at this," he called out from behind a stack of sealed medical containers. "There's something back here that don't belong." Andre walked over, expecting to find maybe a loose crate or some damaged packaging. Instead, he found something that made him freeze in place. Curled up in a tiny space between two containers was a small figure. At first glance, he thought it might be a child who had somehow gotten lost in the cargo area. But as his eyes adjusted to the shadows, he realized this was no human child. The creature was barely 3 feet tall with delicate features and skin that had a soft blue tint, like moonlight on water. Her hair was white as snow and seemed to shimmer when the dock lights hit it. She was wearing what looked like the remains of some kind of uniform, torn and dirty from her journey. But what struck Andre the most were her eyes, large and silver, filled with a fear so deep it made his heart ache. She was shivering violently in the cold station air, her small body trembling like a leaf in a storm. Whatever she was, wherever she came from, she was clearly suffering. Andre could see she was barely conscious, probably hadn't eaten in days. "Should we call security?" whispered Tanya Davis, another dock worker who had come to see what was happening. "I mean, what is that thing?" "She's not a thing," Andre said quietly, surprising himself with the firmness in his voice. "She's scared and cold." While his colleagues stood there debating what to do, Andre made a decision that would change everything. He slowly removed his thermal work jacket, the one that had kept him warm through countless shifts in the cold dock. Without hesitation, he wrapped it gently around the small alien figure. The moment the warm jacket touched her skin, her silver eyes snapped open and focused on Andre's face. There was terror there, but also something else, a flicker of hope. She said something in a language he'd never heard before, musical and soft despite her obvious distress. Her voice was barely a whisper, but he could hear the desperation in it. "It's okay," Andre said gently, keeping his voice calm and low. "You're safe now. Nobody's going to hurt you." She didn't understand his words, but something in his tone seemed to reach her. She pulled his jacket tighter around herself and continued to stare at him with those incredible silver eyes. That's when everything went wrong. The dock's emergency lights began flashing as Security Chief Keisha Johnson arrived with a full tactical team. They'd been alerted by the other workers and came prepared for a potential threat. 6 armed officers in full gear surrounded the area, weapons drawn. The alien girl took one look at the approaching security team and panicked. She scrambled backward, pressing herself against the containers, but there was nowhere to go. In desperation, she reached out and grabbed onto Andre's arm, her small fingers gripping him like he was her only anchor in a storm. "Stand back, Washington," Chief Johnson ordered. "We don't know what this thing is capable of." "She's just scared," Andre protested, but he could see the fear in the security team's eyes too. First contact with an alien species wasn't something any of them had trained for. Station Commander Troy Bennett arrived moments later, taking in the scene with experienced eyes. The alien girl was now clinging to Andre like her life depended on it, and any attempt to separate them seemed to send her into deeper panic. "Quarantine protocols, immediately," Commander Bennett decided. "Nobody knows how she got here or what she might be carrying. But it looks like she's bonded to you, Washington. Until we figure this out, you're her primary contact." Dr. Monica Rivera had seen plenty of unusual cases during her 15 years as the station's chief medical officer, but nothing had prepared her for this. The small alien girl sat on the examination table, still wrapped in Andre's work jacket, watching every movement with those large silver eyes. Her blue-tinged skin had a translucent quality that seemed almost ethereal under the medical bay's bright lights. "Her core body temperature is dangerously low," Dr. Rivera explained to Andre, who had refused to leave the girl's side. "She's been exposed to cold for too long, and from what I can tell, she hasn't had any food or water in at least 3 days. Maybe longer. The alien girl flinched every time someone other than Andre came too close. When Nurse Bradley Thompson tried to take her vital signs, she pressed herself against the wall and made soft, distressed sounds. Only when Andre held her hand did she allow the medical examination to continue. Through careful observation and patience, they learned her name. She pointed to herself and said something that sounded like Kira, at least that's what Andre thought he heard. When he repeated the name back to her, her eyes brightened slightly, and she nodded. Kira, Andre said again, pointing to her, then pointed to himself. Andre. She tried to repeat his name, but her vocal cords seemed designed for different sounds. What came out was something closer to Nda, but the effort was there. It was their first real moment of communication, and Andre felt a strange pride in this small breakthrough. Dr. Rivera worked quickly but gently, administering 4 fluids and warming blankets. Kira's physiology was similar enough to humans that basic medical care seemed to work, though her blood had an unusual copper-based composition that gave it a greenish tint. Her heart had 4 chambers instead of 2, and beat much faster than a human heart. While the medical team worked, Andre pulled out his tablet and started drawing simple pictures. He drew a stick figure person, then pointed to himself. Then he drew what he hoped looked like Kira, a smaller figure with long hair. She watched intently, and when he handed her the stylus, she added details to her drawing that were surprisingly accurate. Over the next few hours, Andre shared his lunch with Kira. The station's standard protein bars and nutrient drinks seemed foreign to her at first, but hunger won out. She ate slowly, as if she wasn't sure the food was real. Between bites, Andre continued their drawing lessons, teaching her basic English words. He drew a circle and said food. She repeated it back as fuodi. He drew wavy lines and said water. She managed wata. Each small success seemed to give her more confidence. By the end of the day, she could say about 20 basic words, though her pronunciation was unique. That's when Political Officer Calvin Brooks arrived, and the atmosphere in the medical bay changed immediately. He was a stern man who saw everything through the lens of regulations and protocol. To him, Kira represented a potential security threat and a diplomatic opportunity that needed to be handled at the highest levels. This situation is beyond our authority, Brooks declared, looking at Kira like she was a particularly interesting specimen. Earth Command needs to be notified immediately. They'll want to study her, learn about her species and technology. She's not ready for that, Andre argued, instinctively stepping closer to Kira's bedside. Look at her, she's barely recovered from whatever happened to her. She needs time to heal. She needs to be properly debriefed, Brooks countered. We need to know where she came from, how she got here, and whether there are more of her kind coming. As they argued, Kira became increasingly agitated. She had been making steady progress, even managing to smile a few times when Andre successfully learned a word in her language. But now she was pointing frantically toward the medical bay's observation windows that looked out into space. Danger, she said, one of the English words Andre had taught her. But she kept saying it over and over, pointing at the stars beyond the station. Danger, danger, danger. Her voice was getting more urgent, almost panicked. She grabbed Andre's hand and pulled him toward the window, gesturing wildly at the empty space beyond. Whatever had happened to her out there, whatever had brought her to their station, she was trying to warn them about something. Dr. Rivera sedated her gently when the panic attack became too severe, but even as she drifted off to sleep, Kira kept whispering that same word, danger. 3 days after Kira's arrival, Andre sat with her in the station's observation lounge, watching her struggle to piece together the words that would change everything. She had learned enough English now to communicate basic ideas, but what she needed to tell them was far from basic. My people, she began slowly, her voice still soft but more confident than before. She pointed to herself, then gestured broadly as if indicating many others. Athene. We live far. She pointed toward a distant section of stars visible through the massive viewport. Andre nodded encouragingly. Over the past few days, he had become skilled at understanding her broken English mixed with gestures and drawings. Dr. Rivera had cleared Kira medically, though she was still thin and recovering her strength. Machines come, Kira continued, and her silver eyes grew dark with remembered terror. Big machines. They. She struggled for the word, then made a chewing motion with her mouth. Eat. Eat everything. Eat what? Andre asked gently. Kira stood up and walked to the viewport. She pressed her small blue hand against the transparent aluminum and looked out at the stars. Worlds, she whispered. They eat worlds. Make them, gone. The word sent a chill down Andrei's spine. He had seen the fear in her eyes from the beginning, but now he was starting to understand the source of that terror. My ship, Kira continued, turning back to him. Science ship. We study the eaters. We call them devourers. Very bad name for very bad things. She shuddered as she spoke. Andrei's communication device beeped. It was Commander Troy Bennett, requesting both of them to come to the command center immediately. Something in his tone suggested this wasn't routine. When they arrived, the command center was buzzing with activity. Officers moved between workstations with urgent purpose, and the main display screen showed long-range sensor readings that Andrei didn't understand but looked ominous. Washington, we need to hear what your friend has to say, Commander Bennett said without preamble. Our sensors have detected something approaching from deep space. Multiple objects, massive in size, moving at speeds that should be impossible according to our physics. Kira looked at the sensor data and went pale. Even her blue-tinged skin seemed to lose color. Devourers, she whispered. They found me. They followed. Chief Science Officer Patricia Williams looked up from her console. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. These objects are easily 10 times larger than our biggest ships, and they're accelerating toward us. How long do we have? Bennett asked. At their current speed, maybe 18 hours, Williams replied. Kira grabbed Andrei's arm with surprising strength. No time, she said urgently. When devourers come, they not stop. They eat everything. Metal, people, planets. Everything becomes part of them. Political Officer Calvin Brooks, who had been pushing to transfer Kira to Earth Command, suddenly looked much less confident. What exactly are we dealing with here? Kira walked to the main display and pointed at the approaching signals. Machine intelligence. Very old. They travel between stars, find life, take everything. My people fought them for many cycles. We lost. The command center fell silent except for the soft hum of electronics. Andrei could see the fear spreading across every face in the room. These weren't soldiers or pirates or even hostile aliens they could understand. This was something that consumed entire civilizations. Is there any way to fight them? Commander Bennett asked. For the first time since Andrei had known her, Kira smiled. It was a sad smile, but there was hope in it too. She reached into the remains of her torn uniform and pulled out a small device that seemed to pulse with its own internal light. My people, before the end, they make weapon. Last hope weapon. She held the device carefully, like it was the most precious thing in existence. But weapon need two kinds of mind. Ethny mind and... She paused, looking around the room, and your kind of mind. Human mind. What kind of weapon? Chief Williams asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. Quantum resonance, Kira said, using words she had clearly memorized. It make devour machines, confused. They cannot eat confused energy. But very dangerous. Need perfect cooperation. Andrei felt the weight of the moment. This small alien girl, barely recovered from her ordeal, was offering them their only chance of survival. But it would require a level of trust and cooperation between species that had never been attempted before. Commander Bennett looked around the room at his officers, then back at Kira. What do you need from us? Kira's silver eyes found Andrei's across the crowded command center. I need friend, she said simply. I need Andrei to help me save both our peoples. The first impact shook Station Alpha 7 like a toy in a giant's hand. Emergency sirens wailed throughout the corridors as the Devourer fleet dropped out of hyperspace, their massive forms blocking out entire sections of stars. Andrei grabbed onto a support beam as another explosion rocked the station, sending sparks flying from damaged electrical systems. All civilian personnel to evacuation shuttles immediately, Commander Bennett's voice echoed through the communication system. This is not a drill. Repeat, all civilians to evacuation shuttles. Through the command center's viewports, Andrei could see the enemy ships for the first time. They weren't like anything humanity had ever built. These vessels looked grown rather than constructed, with organic curves that pulsed with sickly green light. They moved with purpose, targeting the station's defensive platforms with surgical precision. Kira stood beside him, her small device glowing brighter as the enemy approached. They know I am here, she said quietly. They want the weapon data, but they will destroy everything to get it. The station's defense turrets fired desperately at the approaching devourers, but their weapons seemed to have little effect. The enemy ships simply absorbed the energy blasts, growing slightly larger with each hit. Andre watched in horror as one of their patrol ships was caught in some kind of energy beam and literally dissolved into component atoms. Evacuation Shuttle Bay 3 is compromised, came another announcement. Shuttle Bay 7 is taking heavy damage. Dr. Monica Rivera appeared at Andre's side, her medical kit slung over her shoulder. I'm staying with the emergency medical team, she told him. Someone has to help the wounded. She looked at Kira with concern. Are you sure about this quantum weapon? It sounds incredibly dangerous. Kira nodded solemnly. More dangerous not to try. If Devourers take station, they learn about Earth. Then they eat your whole world. The reality of that statement hit Andre like a physical blow. This wasn't just about saving the station anymore. Earth itself was at stake, along with every human being in the solar system. What do I need to do? Andre asked. Kira led him to a quiet corner of the command center and pulled out her device. Up close, Andre could see it was incredibly complex, covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change as he looked at them. I must connect device to station's main computer. But weapon needs both our minds to guide it. She showed him a thin cable that emerged from the device. At its end was something that looked disturbingly like a medical probe. This goes into your brain, she said simply. And this one goes into mine. Our thoughts become one thought. Andre stared at the probe. The idea of having an alien device inserted into his brain was terrifying, but outside, another explosion shook the station. Through the viewport, he could see evacuation shuttles desperately fleeing as the Devourers continued their methodical destruction. Will it hurt? He asked. I do not know, Kira admitted. My people, they practice this many times. But human brain is different. Might hurt. Might be dangerous. Commander Bennett approached them as his bridge crew worked frantically at their stations. Whatever you're going to do, you need to do it now. We've lost 60% of our defenses, and the Devourers are targeting our reactor core. Andre looked at Kira, this small alien girl who had already lost everything. She was asking him to risk his life, his sanity, maybe his very identity, on a weapon that might not even work with human physiology. But as another shuttle exploded in the distance, he realized there wasn't really a choice. Let's do it, he said. Kira's hands were surprisingly steady as she prepared the neural interfaces. When minds connect, she explained, you will see my memories. I will see yours. We must not fight this. We must become one purpose. Andre felt the probe slide into the base of his skull with a strange tingling sensation. Then Kira inserted her own interface, and suddenly the world exploded into colors and sensations he had no words for. He was flying through space in a ship unlike anything humans had ever built, surrounded by other Ethni as they desperately tried to escape their dying world. He felt their fear, their determination, their love for each other and for life itself. He experienced the moment when the Devourers found them, the horrible sensation of watching his people consumed by machines that turned everything into more of themselves. But Kira was experiencing his memories too. She felt his childhood on Earth, his decision to work in the docks because he wanted to help people, his immediate compassion when he found her cold and afraid. She understood, perhaps for the first time, that not all species were like the Devourers. Some chose kindness over conquest. Together, their combined consciousness reached out to the quantum weapon and guided its impossible energies toward the Devourer fleet. The weapon didn't destroy the enemy ships so much as convince them they had never existed at all, creating a cascade of quantum uncertainty that spread from ship to ship until the entire fleet simply faded from reality. When Andre opened his eyes, Kira was unconscious beside him, but she was smiling. 6 months after the battle at Station Alpha 7, Andre Washington stood in what used to be a storage room but was now Earth's first interspecies relations office. The walls were covered with star charts, cultural notes, and translation guides for 17 different alien languages. It still amazed him how quickly his life had changed from loading cargo containers to being humanity's primary contact with refugee species from across the galaxy. Kira sat at her workstation, her blue fingers dancing across a holographic display that showed the complete cultural and technological database of the Ethni civilization. The small device she had carried during her escape had contained the accumulated knowledge of her entire species, millions of years of science, art, philosophy, and most importantly, detailed information about the Devourer threat. The Zalari delegation will arrive tomorrow, Kira informed him, looking up from her work. Her English had improved dramatically over the months, though she still had a musical accent that made even mundane reports sound like poetry. They have been hiding in the outer nebula for 300 years, afraid to make contact with anyone. Andre nodded, reviewing the files on his tablet. The Zalari were the seventh refugee species to make contact since news of the Devourer defeat had spread through hidden communication networks. Each group brought their own stories of survival, their own technologies, and their own fears about the machine intelligence that had driven them from their homes. Their ships use crystalline energy cores, Kira continued. Very efficient, but they need specific minerals that are rare in their hiding place. I think Earth colonies can trade for these minerals. It was remarkable how naturally they worked together now. The neural connection they had shared during the battle had left both of them changed. Andre found himself understanding alien concepts that should have been impossible for a human mind to grasp, while Kira had developed an intuitive understanding of human nature that made her an excellent diplomat. Dr. Monica Rivera entered the office carrying 2 cups of coffee and 1 cup of the nutrient drink that Kira preferred. She had become their unofficial liaison with the medical and scientific communities, helping to ensure that alien visitors received proper care. The council meeting went well, she reported, settling into one of the chairs they had added for visitors. Earth Command has approved the joint exploration mission. You'll have a crew of 30 humans and 23 beings from various species. Andre felt a familiar mix of excitement and nervousness. The mission would take them beyond mapped space, searching for more survivor civilizations and gathering intelligence about Devourer movements. It was dangerous work, but necessary if they were going to build a real alliance against the machine threat. Commander Bennett thinks we're crazy, Andre said with a smile. A dock worker and an alien refugee leading humanity's first deep space diplomatic mission. Commander Bennett said the same thing about trusting an alien with our defense systems, Kira reminded him. But sometimes crazy ideas work better than careful plans. Their friendship had grown into something unique in the galaxy's history. They understood each other in ways that went beyond language or culture, partly because of their neural link, but mostly because they had learned to trust each other completely. Kira had shown Andre wonders of science and philosophy that expanded his understanding of the universe, while Andre had taught her about human resilience, humor, and the importance of hope. On the wall behind Kira's workstation hung Andre's old thermal jacket, the one he had wrapped around her that first day in the cargo bay. It had become something of a symbol around the station, proof that small acts of kindness could change the course of history. Visiting aliens often asked about it, and the story had spread to other species as an example of what humans could be at their best. The ship is ready, Dr. Rivera continued. The Unity is the most advanced vessel Earth has ever built, combining human engineering with technologies from 6 different species. Captain Torres is excited to work with such a diverse crew. Andre walked to the viewport and looked out at the construction yards where their ship waited. The Unity was beautiful in its own way, sleek human lines enhanced with Ethany energy systems, Zalari crystal drives, and defensive technologies from species whose names he was still learning to pronounce. Are you nervous? Kira asked, joining him at the window. Terrified, Andre admitted. But also excited. A year ago, I thought the most interesting thing that would happen to me was finding a misplaced cargo container. Now we're about to explore unknown regions of space with beings I didn't even know existed. Kira smiled, that same expression of hope he had first seen when she recovered from her ordeal. My people have a saying, the greatest journeys begin with the smallest steps. Your small step was giving me your jacket when I was cold and afraid. Now look where it has led us. As they prepared for departure, Andre realized that their mission was about more than just finding allies or fighting the Devourers. They were proving that different species could work together, that understanding was possible even across vast differences in biology and culture. The jacket hanging on the wall was a reminder that sometimes the most important thing you could do was simply show kindness to someone who needed help. Tomorrow, they would venture into the unknown, carrying that message with them to the stars.